I was only 11 years old when I overheard something that froze me from the inside out. My mother was speaking in a low voice, almost whispering, as if her tongue carried a sin too heavy to speak aloud. "She's Mexican. Nobody's going to ask questions. Just make sure she behaves." In that moment, the smell of burnt beans on the stove made me sick. The kettle's whistle felt like a scream trapped in my throat. I was standing barefoot on the cold wooden floor, listening through the crack in the kitchen door as my mother sold my childhood for a handful of dollars. "My name is Maria Elena Ramirez. I'm 74 years old today. But for a long time, I was just La Niña Callada, the quiet girl, the one who didn't cry, didn't ask, didn't resist. I grew up believing I was invisible, until the day I was noticed by the wrong man." My story begins in a dusty little town in Texas in 1962. We had just crossed the border from Coahuila, Mexico, fleeing hunger. My parents said America was the land of dreams, but for me, it felt like a desert, dry, cruel, and endless. My father, Juan, Carlos drank too much. My mother, Lucia, was hard, the kind of woman who seemed to have forgotten how to cry. I was the oldest of 5 kids. While the little ones played with sticks and stones in the backyard, I washed clothes in a basin, cooked beans, and tried to understand homework from a school where no one spoke my language. That day, when I heard the conversation, I knew something bad was coming. It wasn't just a feeling. It was like my entire body knew. My hands, my stomach, even my knees were whispering, "Run, Maria, run." But I didn't run. The next afternoon, a man arrived. His truck was light blue, but covered in dust like everything else around us. He got out slowly, with a wide hat that covered half his face. His hands were large and his nails were black with grease. His name was Mr. Thompson, but my mother just called him El Señor. "He's going to take care of you. He'll feed you," she said, without looking me in the eye. I was shaking so badly it felt like the wind had gone inside my chest. She pushed me out with a worn cloth bag in my hands. Inside was a tattered dress, a piece of bread, and a broken hairbrush. There was no hug. No goodbye. In the passenger seat of that truck, I watched my wooden house disappear behind us. The dirt road kicked up dust, and in the dirty window I saw the reflection of a scared little girl. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Just silent tears down a face no one really saw. That was the beginning of my prison. His house smelled like mold and oil. It was an old trailer in the middle of an abandoned field, surrounded by a silence that felt like it could scream. He showed me where I would sleep, a mat on the floor next to the sink. Then he said, dryly, "Obey, and nothing bad will happen." But what he didn't say was everything that would. The first night in that trailer, I didn't sleep. I lay, curled on that worn mat, staring at the stained ceiling, trying to understand where I was and what I had become. There was a smell in that place I'll never forget. Moldy bread, old grease, and something else. Like rusted metal and loneliness. The kind of smell that sticks to your clothes and follows you everywhere, even in your dreams. Mr. Thompson didn't say much. He just turned off the lights, locked the door with a loud click, and walked to the back room. I could hear the floor creak under his heavy steps, and my heart raced every time he moved. That night, I cried silently. I didn't sob. I didn't make a sound. I had already learned how dangerous noise could be. In the morning, I tried to find the sun, but the windows were so filthy it barely got in. There was no clock, no calendar, no familiar voices. Just chores. He gave me a list, written, in blocky, almost childlike handwriting, wash clothes. Clean kitchen, cook lunch, no mistakes, and at the bottom, in thick pencil, no talking, no leaving. No crying. I didn't understand all the English, but I got the message. He left during the day. I don't know where he went. Maybe to work. Maybe not. All I knew was that I had a few hours alone. That was the only time I could breathe. I found a small photo on top of an old radio of a little girl with blonde hair and big eyes. I stared at it for a long time. She looked about my age. She was smiling. What had happened to her? Why was her picture still here? Later that day, he came back drunk. His footsteps were different, slower, heavier. I was scrubbing the floor when he walked in and threw something at me. A piece of bread, hard as stone. "That's dinner," he slurred. "Don't expect more." I didn't answer. I just nodded. Always nod. Always quiet. But then he crouched in front of me. I could smell the alcohol on his breath, sour, sharp. His hand grabbed my wrist. "Do you think you're better than me?" he asked, eyes red and wild. "Your mother said you were obedient. Are you?" I nodded again. "Good," he said, squeezing tighter. "Because no one's coming for you." And that was the moment I stopped being a child. That night, I didn't dream. I stared at the ceiling again, counting every crack, trying to anchor myself to something real. I repeated the same words in my mind over and over. Survive, Maria Elena. Just survive. Days passed, maybe weeks. I lost track. I wasn't allowed outside. The only time I saw the sky was when he opened the door to leave. I started whispering to myself in Spanish so I wouldn't forget who I was. Me llamo María Elena. Nací en Coahuila. Mi madre se llamaba Lucía. Tengo 4 hermanos. Those words became my prayer, my way of staying human. Then, one afternoon, something changed. I was cleaning under the sink when I found it. An old notebook, tucked behind a bucket. It was dusty and smelled like mildew, but the pages were intact. Inside, written in neat, careful handwriting, was a name, Sophie Thompson, age 12. The blonde girl from the photo. She had written poems, short ones, sad ones. The sky is blue, but I am gray. He shouts and breaks and takes away. If I disappear one day, will anyone come? Or will they stay? My heart dropped. Suddenly, the trailer wasn't just a prison. It was a graveyard of other girls' voices. And Sophie. Sophie had lived here before me, or maybe she never left. I couldn't stop thinking about Sophie. That little notebook became my secret treasure. I read every word again and again, until I could whisper her poems by heart. They were raw, honest, and full of a sadness I knew too well. She had felt trapped, here too. She had cried in the same dark corners. Maybe she had laid on the same mat. Maybe she had prayed, like me, for someone to come. But no one had. And now, I didn't know if she had escaped, or if something worse had happened to her. The next morning, while Mr. Thompson was gone, I searched the trailer. My hands shook with every creak of the floor. I knew he could come back at any moment, but I needed to know. I checked under the mattress, behind cabinets, under piles of junk that smelled like mildew and gasoline. That's when I found it. Under a loose floorboard, wrapped in plastic, was a small music box. It was cracked and rusty, but when I turned the little handle, it played a soft lullaby, delicate and haunting. Inside the lid was a name, carved with a pin. Sophie T. She had left it, hidden it, like a whisper in time. I clutched it to my chest and cried. For her, for me, for every girl no one had come for. That day, something shifted inside me. Until then, I had only focused on surviving, breathing, obeying. But now I felt something else. anger. Not wild rage, but a quiet, burning anger that settled deep in my bones. I started asking myself dangerous questions. Why me? Why her? Why was no one stopping him? And how many more girls would there be after me? That night, he was drunk again. He stumbled in, knocking over a chair. He smelled like beer and sweat. I sat on the floor holding the music box in my lap. When he saw it, his face changed. "Where did you get that?" he growled. I froze. My heart was pounding so loud it echoed in my ears. "Answer me," he said, louder this time, grabbing the box from my hands and slamming it against the wall. It shattered. Something inside me cracked too. "She was here before me," I said softly. My voice sounded small but steady. "Sophie, what did you do to her?" His eyes narrowed. For a second, just a second, I saw something in his face. Fear? Guilt? No. It was rage. He hit me. It wasn't the first time. But this time, something was different. He expected me to cry, to beg, to shrink. I didn't. I lay there on the floor, blood in my mouth, cheek burning, and I stared at him. I stared without blinking. And he looked away. That night, after he passed out in his room, I didn't sleep. I waited, watching the door, listening to every sound. And then I did something I never dared to do before. I took one of his jackets from the hook. I put it on, even though it smelled like oil and cigarettes. I slowly opened the drawer by the sink, where I had seen him keep a small knife for peeling potatoes. I took it. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet. I just knew that the fear wasn't enough anymore. Something had awakened in me. Sophie's poems echoed in my mind as I sat there in the dark. If I disappear one day, will anyone come? I whispered to the silence. I'll come, Sophie. For both of us. The next morning, I woke before the sun. The trailer was quiet, the air thick with the stench of whiskey and sweat. Mr. Thompson snored loudly behind the closed door of his bedroom. I sat by the sink, holding the small kitchen knife tight in my hand. My fingers ached from gripping it all night. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I couldn't keep doing nothing. I waited for a sound. Any sound. The creak of a step. The groan of the old floor. But it was silence that answered me. So I moved. I tiptoed to the back of the trailer, barefoot, every step slow and soft. The wood was warped and cold. I stopped at the bedroom door. It was slightly ajar. The sour smell was stronger there, mixed with tobacco and something rotting. I pushed the door open an inch. There he was, passed out on the bed, one leg hanging off the side, mouth open. A bottle of whiskey clutched in one hand. A handgun on the dresser. My blood turned to ice. I hadn't known he had a gun. That changed everything. I backed away, slowly, breath shallow, throat burning. I didn't dare make a sound. As I turned the corner, I felt a creak under my foot and froze. He didn't move. I ran back to the small space where I slept, sat on the floor, and tried to breathe. My whole body was shaking. The knife slipped from my hand and clattered on the linoleum floor. The sound was deafening. I waited, frozen. Still nothing. After what felt like hours, the morning light began to seep through the filthy windows. I knew he'd be awake soon, hungover, mean. That was always the most dangerous version of him. But something had changed inside me. I had seen the gun. I had stood at the edge of his room, holding a knife, imagining things I never thought I was capable of imagining. I didn't want to kill him. I didn't want blood on my hands. I wanted out. And for the first time, I realized there might be a way. Later that day, while washing dishes, I heard something strange. A voice. A woman's voice. Outside. My heart skipped. I peeked through the cracked blinds and saw her, an older woman, gray hair in a braid, dragging a cart behind her. She was selling fruit from a makeshift stand set up in the back of her pickup. She was talking to herself, humming a tune in Spanish. She was real. She was there. I wanted to scream, to pound on the glass, to beg her not to leave. But I knew better. Mr. Thompson was sitting on the porch, shotgun across his lap. He didn't wave, he didn't smile, just stared at her like she was something annoying that had wandered too close. She didn't even look at him. She loaded up her cart again and drove off, and I just stood there behind the blinds, teeth clenched so hard my jaw ached. She had been so close. That night I made a decision, not a plan, not yet, but a decision. I would not die in that trailer. The next morning, when he left, I took a pencil stub and the last blank page of Sophie's notebook. I drew a map of what I could remember of the outside, where the road was, where the fruit woman had parked, how far the woods were behind the trailer. Then I found a loose piece of cloth from the torn mattress cover. I stitched the knife inside, hidden, just in case. I didn't know when or how, but I would find a way. And if I couldn't escape, I would make sure no one else ever had to survive what I did. The days blurred together like fog in the distance. Each one felt longer than the last. I lived in the same rhythm. Fear in the morning, silence in the day, tension at night. Every sound made my heart jolt. Every shadow was a threat. But then, something happened. Something I wasn't prepared for. It was late, past midnight. Mr. Thompson had been out all day and came home in a worse state than usual. I could hear him stumbling outside, muttering things to himself. Angry things, names, fragments. He was arguing with someone who wasn't there. I sat frozen by the sink, my hands wrapped in a towel, the stitched knife resting beneath me, hidden, as always. Then I heard him cry. Not just sniffles or a choked breath, a full, broken sob. It didn't sound human. It sounded like something torn open. I peeked through the crack in the wall and saw him sitting on the porch stairs, head in his hands, the bottle of whiskey still in his lap. His back rose and fell with heavy gasps. He said a name. Sophie. Mi niña. He said it over and over, like a curse, like a prayer. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid, but because I was confused. Why would he cry for her? Why say her name like that? The next morning, when I stepped outside to throw out the dirty dishwater, I saw something strange. A new chair. Small. Wooden. Painted pink. It sat next to his own, on the porch. I didn't know what to think. He hadn't spoken to me in 2 days. Barely looked at me. But something about him had shifted. He moved slower. He drank more. And he started keeping the bedroom door closed at all times, even locking it when he was gone. I thought maybe he was breaking down. Then I learned the truth. It was a Tuesday. I remember because the sky was clear, and for once I could smell fresh air through the open kitchen window. I was washing the few dishes we had when I heard it. A whisper. At first, I thought it was in my head, but then I heard it again, faint, but real. Hola? I froze. Hey, alguien ali? It was a girl's voice. I dropped the plate in my hand. It shattered. I ran to the back room and pressed my ear against the wall. Nothing. Silence. But I knew I had heard it. That night, when Mr. Thompson went to bed, I waited until I heard his snoring. Then I crept toward the hallway and stood outside his bedroom door. I leaned down, pressing my face close to the baseboard. There it was again. A voice. Soft. Spanish. Crying. I searched the hallway for anything strange. The wall behind the dresser looked different, too wide for the room. I pulled it aside. Behind it was a second door. A hidden one. I held my breath, heart pounding so loud I thought it might give me away. The door had no handle, but I could see the outline. I pressed my fingers against it, pushed gently. Nothing. But someone on the other side had already heard me. ¿Quién eres tú? The voice whispered. María Elena, I whispered back. ¿Y tú? Silence. Then, mi nombre es Camila. Tengo 10 años. 10. She was a child. She was in there. I stumbled back, hands over my mouth. I wanted to scream, to cry, to tear down the wall. He had done it again. Another girl. A new one. And suddenly, the pink chair on the porch wasn't mysterious anymore. It was for her. I ran to my notebook and tore out a page. I wrote in big letters, I know you're there. I will help you. I slid it under the baseboard. I waited. A few minutes passed, and then I saw it slide back out. Someone had written underneath. I'm scared. I was too. But fear didn't matter anymore. Because now, it wasn't just about surviving. It was about saving someone else. I wasn't alone anymore. For the first time in years, I had a purpose bigger than just survival. There was another girl here, a child, hidden behind a wall, breathing the same poisoned air, walking the same tightrope of silence and fear. Camilla. She became my shadow, my secret, my reason to keep moving. We started exchanging notes, tiny scraps of paper, folded and pushed through, a hairline gap near the floor. I would write at night, hiding under my blanket, using a pencil so short it was barely usable. Then, while Mr. Thompson slept, I'd sneak to the wall, gently slide the paper in, and wait. In her first notes, she told me little things. That she had been taken a few months ago from a fruit market in El Paso, while her mother was distracted, with money in her hand. That she missed arroz con leche. That she hated the dark. That she hadn't seen the sun in weeks. One night, she pushed a note that broke me. I tried to scream once. He hit me. I don't scream anymore. I sat against the wall for hours, tracing my fingers over her words, weeping in silence. I wrote back. I know. I know that pain. But you're not alone anymore. I'm going to get us out. I didn't know how, but I had to believe it was possible. Days passed. I began to study everything. Mr. Thompson's routines, the way he locked. The doors, how long his grocery trips lasted. I noticed he always took his keys with him, except once. That Friday, he forgot them on the kitchen table when he stormed out, angry and yelling at no one. I stared at the keys for 10 minutes, afraid to move. Then I grabbed them. My hands trembled as I rushed to the hidden door. I tried every key, heart pounding louder with each click. None worked, except the last one. I felt it turn. Heard the lock shift. The door creaked open just enough for me to see a pale face staring back. Big, terrified brown eyes. Camilla. Her hair was tangled, her clothes dirty and too small. She looked like I had once looked, too thin, too tired, too used to the dark. But when she saw me, those eyes filled with something I hadn't seen in myself for years. Hope. I reached through the crack and touched her hand. She flinched at first, then held on tight. We don't have much time, I whispered. I can't. Let him see this open. Not yet, but I promise I will come back. Next time we'll run." She nodded, lips trembling. I closed the door slowly, locked it, put everything back the way it was. And just like that, I became something I never thought I could be, a protector. The next night, everything almost fell apart. Mr. Thompson came home early, drunk and paranoid. He slammed cabinets, knocked over chairs. I stayed silent in my corner, heart racing. Then he stopped, stared at the wall. The wrong wall. He tilted his head, like he sensed something. My stomach dropped. He walked over to it, knocked on it. Once. Twice. I held my breath. Then he grunted and walked away, mumbling about ghosts in the damn walls. He passed out on the couch minutes later, snoring like a bear. I didn't sleep. I spent the whole night memorizing the map I had drawn. I found a rusted screwdriver and slid it under my mattress. I tucked Camilla's last note into my shirt. "I trust you. Please don't forget me." I never would. The next morning, before he woke, I slipped a final note under the baseboard. "Tonight, be ready. No matter what happens, don't stop running." It was the first time I allowed myself to believe it. We might actually escape, or we might die trying. Either way, I would rather face the open world with a child in my hand than stay one more day in that cage. That night, the sky was darker than usual. No moon, no stars, just black. I took it as a sign. The world was giving us cover. Mr. Thompson had passed out early, as I'd hoped. He'd been drinking since noon, muttering about taxes, the government, ungrateful girls. His words were slurred. His eyes didn't focus. He didn't even lock the front door. I waited by the hidden wall until I heard his snoring. Deep, rhythmic. Then I moved. I pulled the screwdriver from under my mattress and crept down the hallway, heart pounding so hard it felt like a hammer in my chest. Every creak in the floor was a gunshot. Every shadow was a threat. When I reached the back wall, I used the screwdriver to gently pry the molding loose. I unlocked the hidden door. Camilla stood there, already dressed in an oversized hoodie I had smuggled in days before. Her small hands clutched a note I had written her, one she had refused to let go of. We didn't speak. We couldn't. I took her hand. Cold, small. She was shaking. So was I. We crept toward the front of the trailer, avoiding the couch where he lay, sprawled, snoring. The air reeked of alcohol and sweat. A half-empty bottle rolled on the floor as he shifted in his sleep. Camilla looked up at me, eyes wide. I squeezed her hand. Almost there. The front door was only 10 feet away. I had unlocked it earlier that day while cleaning, left it slightly ajar. I could feel the night air pushing through the crack, cool and fresh. The outside. Freedom. 5 feet. 3 feet. Crack. Camilla's foot hit a loose board. Mr. Thompson stirred. We froze. I held her behind me, barely breathing. He muttered something. Rolled over. Silence. Then, "Who's there?" His voice cut the air like a blade. He sat up, eyes red, confused, blinking. When he saw us, everything snapped into motion. "Hey!" He lunged. I shoved the door open with all my strength and screamed. "Run!" We bolted into the night, feet pounding the dry dirt, lungs burning. Camilla was fast, but her legs were short. I pulled her by the arm, not looking back, just running, toward the woods behind the trailer, where I had memorized every tree, every path. Shots rang out behind us. Boom. Boom. The sound shattered the night like thunder. Camilla screamed, stumbled. I grabbed her, kept her upright. Another shot. A bullet whizzed past us, ripping bark off a tree. We reached the edge of the woods. I pushed Camilla ahead of me, yelling, "Keep going, don't stop." But then I felt it. A white-hot pain exploded in my thigh. I fell hard, face in the dirt. I'd been hit. Camilla turned back. "Maria, run," I shouted. "Go. Find the fruit lady. Her name is Alma. Keep going." She didn't move. "She'll kill you if you stay, Camilla. Run." Tears streamed down her face, but she did what I asked. She ran. I dragged myself behind a fallen tree, blood soaking my pants. My breath was shallow. My body shook with adrenaline and pain. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Mr. Thompson, limping, breathing hard. "Thought you could take her from me, huh?" He growled. "You think you're better than me?" I stayed silent. He came closer. I could see his boots through the brush. I clutched the screwdriver in my hand, hidden beneath me. One more step. I waited. Then I struck. I lunged forward with what little strength I had, ramming the screwdriver into his calf. He screamed, fell to the ground, clutching his leg. That gave me enough time to crawl deeper into the woods, heart pounding, blood trailing behind me. I didn't know if I was going to live. I didn't know if Camilla would find help. But I knew one thing. We were no longer prisoners. We had run, and even if my body failed, my spirit never would. I don't remember how long I crawled. The pain in my leg was unbearable, like fire eating through bone. Every movement sent shocks of agony through my body, and every breath felt like I was inhaling broken glass. The air was cold, damp, and full of night sounds, insects buzzing, distant dogs barking, branches whispering secrets in the wind. I didn't know where Camilla had gone. I prayed she had made it to the road, to someone who would stop, someone who would care. I whispered her name again and again, like a mantra. Camilla, Camilla, Camilla. Then everything went dark. I woke up to sunlight. Not the yellow, dirty glow that seeped through Mr. Thompson's windows. Real sunlight, bright, white, blinding. My eyes burned. My lips were cracked. My body was still. At first, I thought I was dead. Then I heard voices. Female voices. Speaking Spanish. ¿Está viva? Dios mío. Mira su pierna. Hay sangre por todas partes. I blinked, and a face came into view. An old woman. Silver braid. Sun-worn skin. Eyes full of worry. It was her. La Señora de la Fruta. Alma. She pressed a damp cloth to my forehead. Her hands were warm and rough, the way hands get when they've spent a lifetime surviving. "You're safe now, Nina," she said softly. "You're safe." I faded in and out of consciousness for what felt like days. I woke up in a small room, lying on a real bed, soft, clean sheets under me. My leg was wrapped in bandages. I could smell fresh coffee and corn tortillas. I heard a radio playing old rancheras in the kitchen. But what mattered most, she was there. Camilla. Sitting on a stool beside the bed, clutching a blanket, eyes red, from crying. When she saw I was awake, she stood slowly. She didn't say anything. Just took my hand and held it to her cheek. I cried. Tears of relief, of pain, of gratitude. I had gotten her out, and I was still alive. Alma told me later what happened. Camilla had run for nearly an hour barefoot, stumbling and bleeding from the knees, until she reached the edge of the fruit stand route. She had recognized the red truck from before. She had banged on Alma's window until her fists were raw. "Hay una mujer herida. Por favor, ayúdela." Alma didn't hesitate. She drove straight into the woods. She said she saw the blood trail, followed it until she found me curled beside a log, barely breathing. "You would have died by morning," she said, stroking my hair. I believed her. The police came. I told them everything. It poured out of me like water breaking through a dam. Every year, every scar, every moment I had swallowed in silence. I gave them Sophie's notebook, the map I'd drawn, the broken music box, the pink chair. They listened, and this time, they believed. They found Mr. Thompson 2 days later, alone in the trailer, bleeding, armed, and screaming at walls. He never got to hurt another girl again. They also found evidence of other victims. Sophie. Others we didn't even know about. But what mattered most to me was this. Camilla was free. She was placed in a safe home with relatives in New Mexico. I visited her as soon as I could walk again. She ran into my arms, smiling for the first time. Her hair was brushed. Her eyes sparkled. She was learning to draw. She had even written a poem. She read it to me, her voice trembling. A woman came, from the dark. She took my hand. She gave me light. I broke down. She didn't call me Maria Elena anymore. She called me her Tia de Alma, her soul aunt. And in many ways, that's exactly who I became. Freedom doesn't feel like fireworks. It's quiet. It's waking up in a room without locks. It's eating without fear of punishment. It's opening a window, just because you can. But after years of captivity, even the air outside can feel heavy. Your body remembers what your mind is trying to forget. I was free, but I didn't know who I was anymore. The first time I looked at myself in a real mirror, I almost didn't recognize the woman staring back. My hair was matted. My skin had deep lines from stress and sun. My eyes, they didn't belong to an 11-year-old girl anymore. They carried too many ghosts. I whispered my name to the mirror. Maria Elena Ramirez. I said it again, then again. I had spent so many years invisible that I had to teach myself to exist again. Alma gave me a room in her house. A simple space with clean sheets, a small window, and a handmade rosary nailed above the bed. She made fresh tortillas every morning and chamomile tea every night. She didn't ask too many questions. She let me be quiet. That was the greatest gift. One afternoon, while folding laundry, she said, "You don't have to be strong all the time, mija. You survived. That's already strength enough." I broke down in her arms. Not the silent tears I had cried before, but loud guttural sobs. Grief for the years lost. Rage for the girl I used to be. Relief that someone finally saw me. After that, I started to write. At first, it was just fragments, sentences, words that floated around my head like shadows. Basement, knife, silence, Sophie, Camilla, blood, escape. Then it became more. I wrote the whole story. I filled notebook after notebook. Not to forget, but to remember on my terms. I didn't want the past to rot inside me anymore. I wanted to let it breathe, give it a name, give it a voice. One day, I returned to the trailer. The police had cleared it out. It was empty now, dusty, quiet, still carrying the weight of what had happened inside. I walked through it slowly. The kitchen, where I had washed dishes in silence. The floorboard, where I'd hidden the knife. The corner where I had first heard Camilla's voice. And then, the back wall. They had removed it. The hidden room was now exposed. Sunlight poured into it for the first time in years. The little mattress was gone, but the outline remained on the floor, like a shadow burned into memory. I stood there for a long time. I didn't cry. I just closed my eyes, placed my palm on the wall, and whispered, "Sophie, I saw you. I still do." Later. That week, I lit a candle for her, and for the others. Girls who never made it out. Girls who didn't get their ending. Girls whose names were never written down. I promised I would carry their stories, not as weight, but as fire. Camilla visited me often. She was growing fast, her cheeks fuller, her laugh louder. She had started school again. She wrote me letters every week, full of drawings and silly jokes and sometimes more poems. She didn't speak much about the trailer. I never asked her to. But one afternoon, as we walked through a sunflower field Alma had planted, she tugged on my sleeve and said, "Tia, do you think monsters die?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "Some do, but others, they shrink. When you stop feeding them your fear, they get smaller and smaller, until you don't see them anymore." She nodded. Then she smiled. And in that smile, I saw something I had once thought I'd lost forever. A future. I'm 74 years old now. Sometimes I sit on my porch, yes, my porch, sipping coffee and watching the wind dance through the trees. Birds come and go. The world turns slow, like it's finally in no rush. And I think, I wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't supposed to survive. I wasn't supposed to escape. I wasn't supposed to rebuild anything out of the broken pieces of my childhood. But I did, and I'm still here. People think survival is the end of the story. It isn't. Survival is just the first step. After that, you have to learn how to live again, to trust again, to laugh without guilt, to eat without shame, to rest without fear. You have to learn how to feel again. For years, I walked around like a ghost, not just because of what he did to me, but because of everything I buried deep inside myself to make it through. I had to become numb to survive. I had to turn my body into a cage for my soul. But little by little, I opened the door. It started with writing, with telling my story, with calling things by their real names: abuse, captivity, trauma, survival, resistance, and eventually, healing. Sometimes, Camilla and I sit together and talk about the future. She wants to be a writer. I told her, "You already are." She keeps a notebook just like I did. Only hers is covered in stickers and full of color. She writes stories about dragons, astronauts, and little girls who fight monsters with nothing but their courage. One of those stories is about a girl who lives in a cage, but uses her voice like a key. She named that girl Maria. When she read it to me, I cried. Not because I was sad, but because I saw the next generation doing something I didn't know was possible when I was her age, turning pain into power. To those of you listening now, maybe you've never been locked in a trailer. Maybe you've never been sold, silenced, or hurt the way I was. But maybe you've been afraid. You've felt invisible. You've survived something no one else could see. You've looked in the mirror and not recognized the person staring back. If that's you, I want you to know you are not alone. Your story matters. Your scars are real. And your voice, your beautiful, trembling, powerful voice, is still yours. You can speak. You can heal. You can rebuild. You can live. For a long time, I thought the most powerful words in the world were, "I'm sorry. Now I know better." The most powerful words are, "I'm still here. I am Maria Elena Ramirez. I was sold. I was silenced. I was broken. But I am not what they did to me. I am what I chose to become after. And today, I live in truth, in love, and in fire. And every time the wind blows through the trees outside my window, I hear Sophie's music box in the leaves. She's still here too. If you made it through this story, share it. Somewhere, someone is still locked in silence. Let's bring them home.